going on. So what do you want to start with in the news?
Well, kind of wanted to start with this story. So Marjorie Taylor Greene and all of her, all of her glory. She got reamed for something about her stupid workout video, or we're not going to get into that today. But she talked about, she went on Fox News and she thought, this is her thought, is there should be a national divorce. So we should separate all the red states from all the blue states. Right? Now, despite how stupid this was, of course, this becomes an interesting topic on the news, especially if you're in economics or finance, because you're sitting there going, what would that look like? Right? But
I don't think she would be as happy with the result as she thinks she would be from a financial standpoint.
Nope, not at all.
Economically, that'd be a mess for her.
Well, anyway, so it went further, and then she kind of doubled down on it. So here's a clip of her, real quick, and kind of her statements, in case you don't believe me. I stole this from the Young Turks. So
we've seen people fleeing those leftist policies and moving to states like Florida, Georgia, Texas, states where they like the tax policies.
Well, let me clarify this. The reason that's kind of slowed down people leaving New York and California, especially. But part of the reason there was a lot of people that moved out of those states was because the cost, right? Because to live in those big cities, the rents went way, way up, right?
Sure.
So not so much that they didn't like living there. It was just they could afford to live, in Texas where everybody's broke and their money goes a lot further. Same reason people retire.
Sure, it was based on their wallets more so than their preferences. Perhaps a few preferences as well, but there was a huge personal finance reason for that.
Yeah.
They like the schools. They like the consequences of Republican and red policies. What I think would be something that some red states could propose is, well, okay, if Democrat voters choose to flee these blue states where they cannot tolerate the living conditions, they don't want their children taught these horrible things, and they really change their mind on the types of policies that they support, well, once they move to a red state, guess what? Maybe you don't get to vote for 5 years. You can live there, you can work there, but...
So there we go.
Oh, so let's just suppress the vote.
But only Democrats. Not Republicans. Only Democrats that move to red states.
You did not make this stuff up. Does she not have people who work for her that tell her do not go on and say dumb crap like that?
Could you imagine anybody who's smart enough to say, don't say that, working for her? Would you want that on your resume? I mean, no, if you're if you're a Republican in that situation, no, you're like applying for Mitt Romney, or you're applying for, Ron Johnson. Not even Ron Johnson is an idiot, but I mean, you're applying for somebody who's at least intelligent. Mitch McConnell. You're not, you're not going to get stuck with that shit. Well, anyway, so that's funny because it's horrible voter suppression stuff, but anyway, it got funny because this circled through the media, through the corporate media news cycle, right? And
I'm sure they had a heyday with this.
Oh my gosh. And so they were talking about this a lot, but here's Morning Joe. This is MSNBC, but Joe Scarborough, this is his show. He's a Republican. He's a registered Republican. Not my personal favorite, but they actually brought on an economic advisor to talk about what that would look like. Hypothetically, right? And so this is what they got.
Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia made headlines earlier this week calling for Republican states effectively to secede from the Union. The Georgia Republican posted her proposal on Twitter, writing the U.S. should be separated by red and blue states because of, quote, woke culture issues. Morning Joe economic analyst Steve Ratner here with charts that show why a national...
In the background, woke culture issues, and they're like, oh, fucking God. Shouldn't we be covering the train derailment in Ohio? God damn it.
Oh my goodness gracious.
All right, so anyways, so now we have a serious economist. Look at him. He's got the suit. He's got the pocket square. I can't even do that fold. That's amazing. Here we go. He's going to do it. He's going to lay it down.
Of course, would not work out so well for those deep red states. Steve, good morning. What do you have for us?
Good morning. Well, first of all, Marjorie Greene is not alone. There have been a number of polls. There was one in 2021 that 2/3 of Southern Republicans wanted to secede from the rest of the country. And it's not going to work out well, because when you take a look at how the balance of spending versus taxes goes across the country, what you can see here is that on the left side are the states carried by Joe Biden. The green are states in which the state paid more to Washington in taxes than it got back in other benefits. The orange colors, and they're shaded depending upon the degree of disparity, are the states where the states got back more from Washington than they sent. And you can see on the left, a lot of green on the Biden states, 9 states altogether, as a matter of fact. And on the right, the Trump states, virtually every single state except for Utah, don't ask me why Utah, got back more from Washington than it paid. And so it would not really work very well to their advantage to leave. In fact, the top states for getting a better deal from Washington are Kentucky, Mississippi, and West Virginia.
Yeah, and if you look at poverty rates as well, Steve, higher poverty rates correlate by and large with some of these red states.
Yeah, so you can say, well, why is this happening? And poverty rates plays the major role. And first, let's look at what the poverty rates are. The chart on the left graphs the amount.
Look at this. This is ridiculous. Okay, so counties Trump won. They broke this down by counties in this one because it doesn't work by state. If they break it down by county, there are. Let me get down with this, and we'll get back to this graph in a second. So there are 3,000 something counties in the United States, right? And that's how this really breaks down, because like if we're saying like a state like Michigan, right, which tends to be a red state, right, but a lot of their money comes from the Detroit area, which is all blue, and those counties, right? Or states like, Georgia used to be a red state, now it's a blue state, but Georgia, like Atlanta is where all the money is, right? It's like I live in Oregon. If you break down Oregon by counties, Oregon looks like a red state. It looks like there's just the blue is all on the coast, right? But the reason is because in the Portland area, that's where everybody lives. So the 4+ million people in Oregon, like over 3.5 of us live right around Portland. The rest of the state is pretty freaking barren. I mean, you have counties where there's like 10 people in Oregon, and that's the whole county. I mean, it's ridiculous. So what they're going to show here is Biden won 509 of the counties, and Trump won 2,547 counties. Okay, but the counties he won were all very, very low population for the most part. A lot of them were. And they were also the poorest, least educated counties with the lowest life expectancy, worst health outcomes. So it's interesting that Republicans always sort of matches that kind of category where they tend to be poor or less educated, right? Which is what they're showing here. And so what they're showing here in this chart, which is great, is here on the left, it's the poverty rate versus the Republican voter share. And as you can see, the higher the poverty rate, the more you're likely to be a Republican, right? And the GDP share. So of the people that voted, the counties that voted for Biden, they make up 71% of the United States gross domestic product. Those 500 counties, 509 counties. The other 2,547 counties that Trump won only make up 29%, less than a third. So what they're basically saying is, if there was a secession or we split up like that, and let's say that was possible, the Republican counties would basically lose everything. They'd be totally broke. Because the other thing he brought up before, and I did this, if you add up all the blue states, I just did this by states. The blue states, if you factor in all they pay in tax versus all they receive in federal benefits for things like welfare, security net, safety net kind of stuff, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like WIC and all that. So a lot of those are federal benefits that get funneled down through the states. Well, if you factor in how much the blue states paid in total in tax versus what they received, the blue states pay 1.4, and this is from 2019, they paid about $1.4 billion more in tax than they received in benefits, federal benefits. Right.
So you could basically say, in super simple terms, the blue states are essentially giving those various entitlements and funding for social programs to the red states.
Right.
So basically, the blue states are literally funding them for the red states.
For the most part. Then the other side of that coin is, if you look at the red states in full total in 2019, the red states versus what they paid in tax versus what they took in social benefits, the stuff they rail against. We hate Social Security. We hate all the benefits. We hate, all these programs. They just want to give. The Democrats, the red states took in $540.5 billion. Over $500 billion in 2019 in welfare. More than the blues, or over what they paid in taxes. So the blue states are pretty much self-funding, is the point. The red states, on the other hand, have to have the federal government and the blue states to be self-funding in order to fund them, because they're not self-funding. They'd be running massive deficits every year if they were independent. So it's one of those things where it's like they complain, but it's like, dude, without the liberals paying for you, you guys would be flat on your ass. I mean, this is literally like, that your deadbeat cousin staying with you and saying, "Fuck you, I want to watch Fox News," and we say, "No, pay rent then." And he says, "Well, I'm leaving. I'm seceding from this house, man." And we're like, "Okay, what are you gonna do? You're unemployed." Where are you gonna go?
Okay. Well, it might save me money.
It would definitely save us money. Anyway, I just thought that was a funny one, because it's like they like to stir the pot with this, and it's like you haven't thought this through at all, because it's not a bluff.
Right. It's like, I'm going to take my ball and I'm not going to play with you anymore. When you're talking to people that have a whole bag full of balls.
Right. It's like, well, you don't even have a ball.
You take your one ball and I've got a whole bag full of them. So, I mean, all right.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So